Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis. I'm excited and delighted to not only be in this funky setting, but to be joined by Dr. Toby. He has done some amazing things and has taken his Book Bank Foundation to the next level of philanthropy. So I want to get into your background because it's amazing. We are both from Brooklyn, and I learned at the age of 8, and you won't know this about me, but you became homeless. I was abandoned as a child, like literally left in an apartment building almost like this, and grew up with a totally different family. Tell me just sort of what was that like in terms of just trying to manage and cope?
So my mother had worked hard. She worked with the New York State pension retirement system. The gentleman that she was working for had some financial improprieties, embezzlement. So this is a young woman that comes from Georgia. My family's from Georgia. My mother comes up from Georgia. They wanted her to testify, get involved in it. My grandmother was with us as well. And my mother fought the system. She didn't want to be a pawn or be involved in the improprieties. So she refused to buckle down, didn't want to sell her body, didn't want to take any shortcuts, and she just stood and firm to try to get her paycheck. They put a moratorium on pay. It spiraled down. One day we came home, there was no money, and all our toys and furniture were in the street. I was with my brother as well as a child. I was about 8 years old. And when you see this, I made a quick decision. I kind of shut my childhood off because part of that to make sure that my mother and my grandmother would know I was hungry at night. Right. Because I became impatient. We were staying, before they were called welfare hotels, the St. George Hotel in Brooklyn downtown was one of the first, was kind of the model for welfare hotels. We would bounce around with relatives. I think we went to a group home once. We escaped the group home because my grandmother was on top of where we were. We were separated from my mother. So for me, I just was obedient. I was rambunctious, and it forced me to live inside my mind. Most children live in their heart, or they live in their space. Wherever you set that child is there, and you sometimes have to disrupt it to engage for education, to put in love, to pour in spirituality. Mine was completely closed with what I got from birth to 8 years old. So I'm reading books, voracious reader. Most of our days, we would, after school, we would ride on the subways and then go to either a museum, because we had no babysitter, or we would go in a library. So my brother and I would compete and read and read and read. And it only became the downward spiral for even as a child experiencing homelessness was when you're getting impatient. So I had no patience as a child. And I go through this whole process of instability, never having my own bed, never my own clothes, bouncing around. We even end up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for a while, come home, join my aunt in the 7th grade. And I have to adapt socially, emotionally, catching up at the speed of sound. My brother was with me. Okay. My brother Randall was with me, so we had each other sharing and growing. My mother always protected us, so there was no sexual abuse, there was no mental or emotional abuse. We watched my mother's spiral into mental health as low as you could go. My mother today is completely restored, completely sane, completely functional. We talk about all that we've gone through. But I'd say when I got to the 7th grade, we were a part of this amazing spiritual, cultural phenomenon called hip hop. Right. Which birthed me becoming an MC called Sweety G. Right. That trail in music and culture, from the dynamic of breakdancing, DJing, graffiti, storytelling, helped to accumulate, which would be my pathway to communication.
Right. And you were right there in the heart of it from the very, very beginning. Did you have a sense at that time, not where it would go, but how it maybe in its own way was helping to sort of rescue or at least allow your creativity to come out?
No, you don't really know. I mean, we were doing something called pause tapes at that time. And then Mike and Dave Productions kind of discovered the next move of me going with Dougie Fresh, Crash Crew, Grandmaster Caz, all these guys. And I was #1 in Queens for quite a while, and I even ranked as a battle rapper in New York in the 5 boroughs, off and on, up and down, with the greatest in Queens. After me came Run DMC, LL Cool J. They used to come to my shows just before hip hop really broke, and Curtis got the big deal.
And you
when
talk about Curtis Blow when you
Curtis Blow,
say, I know you just throw out these first names, but sure.
Before Curtis Blow got signed, and then I made a decision. I was supposed to go to Sugar Hill, and somebody asked for 100% of my publishing. I remember going home to my grandmother saying, I can't do this. It would be like selling my soul.
Right. And back up, because I know you've been an agent and we're going to get to that, but when you say 100%, like, what does that mean? Like, everything.
Everything. So there's the writer's share and there's the publisher's share.
Okay.
And that gives the power to administrate and control the fiduciary.
Right.
So cognitively, intuitively, and spiritually, I looked at everybody else that had a record deal. Right. And I grew up with, people, South Jamaica Queens, Queens Village, Supreme Team, Cawley, Cat, all these notorious drug dealers. It was the burgeoning crack era. I could have easily went that route. But I was in the middle of that populace, right? I was in the middle. These were my friends and favorites. And the economy, I never dealt drugs, but I benefited from that era. Right. The United States of America benefited from it. Reaganism benefited from it, and so did many families, right? Yeah. It was no different than what the Kennedys did during the Prohibition era, right? And we've seen that many times. We've discovered that in urban communities a million times. But it was the curation of art, expression, fashion, and passion that kept me from crashing.
Oh, I love it. That's great. Wow. Breaking that down, because I mean, what you're going through, not only on an emotional level, but you're still very, very young, is something that most people would certainly not want their kids. Everybody wants their kids, at least. They are willing to make that sacrifice. What other things did you feel you grabbed a hold to really, whether it was your aunts or other things, to really sort of still be able to not lose it? Because it would be easy to be very angry and or very violent or act out in school all the time.
So one thing I used to do when I went to Benjamin Cardozo High School and Queens Village Junior High. So I would compete against myself in the classroom.
Okay.
I played ball in the parks with my friends, sure, but I wasn't on the athletic team. Music, I'd say when I became a senior in high school, I kind of took off. But in between then, I used education. I was competing against myself. So if I had homework on a Monday night that was due Wednesday, I would wait hours before Wednesday to compete against myself, the other students, and the teacher. And this is where I got my work ethic. So I would use the newspapers, I would use the news broadcast. Right. I would go inside the books and I would ask family questions. So now I'm coming up with this overachiever mentality, right, because I always saw life like a dog was chasing me. Right. I had to keep running from that dog. Right. And I was on that run. And when I had the dog beat, I would sit down for a second and think about it, right? So I always thought I would compete against myself because all I had was myself. I never saw myself in the middle of general society. Right. But I wasn't an outcast either, Sure. Right. You were connected to some really important people.
And then you were talking about sort of that decision to say, I'm not going to basically sell my soul and give up everything I worked for. Just walk us through that in terms of sort of making that decision and then sort of what happened afterwards.
So for me, in the art form, I realized I would have to trade my financial and economic possibilities for the future. Mm-hmm. And because I did pretty well as a kid coming up in middle school through high school, and I saw that pathway to success or possibility, I did not want to trade my potential for money. Right. Sure. I was born rich. I wasn't born poor. I was born poor, P-O-U-R, pouring myself into these things. I had the ability to be a vessel to pour into others, saw the richness in myself, and I didn't want to trade these indelible qualities. My brother and I, we were sometimes faster than most. We weren't distracted by girls. We weren't distracted by sports. We weren't distracted by materialism because we didn't have it. Right. So we were always living in other spaces. Mm-hmm. Through books and education, I could travel back to Roman times. I could sit on the raft with Tom Sawyer. There was no limit to where I could travel through education. So we always kind of had an edge. Everybody was looking at culture and trend, and we were looking at moving forward.
Sure, and being trendsetters. Many people, and some people might call it an excuse, would say, teachers don't like me, the books are terrible, it's too dangerous, I can't really do the work and put the study in. What made you think different? What crystallized education is still being the key to your success?
I saw how easy rapping came to me. I saw how easy making money dealing drugs would come, how easy it would be to be successful for a moment and have temporary success. And I said to myself, as long as I live, I'd never be hungry again. Only thing I ever wanted in my life was a bed and my own clothes. I think the minute I started getting into fashion and had this nice bed, I was like, is this easy?
Right.
We need more challenges.
Was it a challenge?
We need more challenges.
Interesting.
And I kind of stopped and went into business during that period of time until I discovered house music as one of the pioneers in house music, and continued to produce, mix records, joined Charles Fisher, managing LL Cool J for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was great.
And so let's talk about that. After high school is done, sort of what's that next step? Because I mean, it almost seems like if you're from New York, you know the hustle, you're born to hustle, but actually putting it together, it's such a big city, it's so competitive. How did you actually sort of make the success come to fruition?
So for me, you know, the hustlers were big, right? Drug dealer hustlers, players. So my thesis was to wait till the hustlers are not hustling.
Okay.
Sort of like when the lions go to the water, they're tired because they just ate the prey. Right. I pull right up. I got something for that water and that good meal you have, right? So when I was going after the players, when the whistle blows and they stop playing, that's the agent piece that's in me. So then I'm pitching, never playing them. Because I didn't want to play against some of them, and some of them I had them beat. The ones I had beat, there was no measure. So I would wait till the ball stops dribbling, the drug stops swinging, the girls stop playing, and catch everybody when they're sitting still and give them resolute, solid ideas with things that they already own. So I never had to sell them anything but themselves, whether it's the power of their potential, something that they're trading, or the money that they made.
Right. Let's talk about a couple of those transactions you did, whether it was with some famous artists or the athletes. What was sort of, you've given some of your key to success, but what you were really trying when you say sell themselves so that they could appreciate the inner, as opposed to it only being, I'm going to make sure I look out for me.
So for instance, maybe I had a friend that was out of drug dealing or had finished or was coming home from jail, and he'd have a couple of $1,000s. I'd say, hey, listen, put that money into a mutual fund. I'll give you 3 mutual funds. And I started out with the Templeton funds when I was about 16. I went to Merrill Lynch with dollars, coins. I might have had $500. And I asked for a broker named Willie Fry. He was an athlete, played at Notre Dame, played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Big, strong brother, really wise.
And you went into the bank at that age?
I went to Merrill Lynch with these coins, put on a suit, walked in and said, I want to invest this $500. And how I knew $500, the minimum to invest in the Wall Street Journal, all those ads I would see was Templeton was $500. So I didn't know to get a money order. I took some coins and singles and 50s and 100s and came in. And I remember he left me there for about 20 minutes. And I knew him 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years later, and he told me he was crying in the back. Because he was poor, and he was facing poverty. I think he was from Alabama, Oklahoma. He was from, I think he was from the Midwest, and that put a light on my head. I put the $500 in. I had to go get a money order. Did he keep the money? No, he had to leave. He had me go get money orders and come and deposit it at Merrill Lynch, and he was gone. Then he bought the shares, and I remember the day he bought the shares, a light went off in me. And I said, can I see it? He said, go to the Wall Street Journal and see those numbers. From that day on, I started telling other people about these investments. Wow. Then I started experimenting and looking around and doing all the research I could get, which I extrapolated from being forced to learn. Right. Sitting in these spaces, always restless, but plugged in. And I started studying trends and Keynesian and Smith economics theorem. You know what I mean? I didn't know that's what it was, but I saw Smith, and I went to Dun and Brad, and I looked at all these inverse. Today, I would connotate this with these extremely macro and microeconomic terms, right? But it was that in its space. So I would model my performance in the market, take no money, and tell the hustlers that's what you should buy. Wow. When their money would move slowly, they might come back and give me some money. Right. No drugs, right. Just money. And then sometimes they would double down and they would give me the money orders. And then so it was never money laundering. It was the mother and the aunt. I became popular doing that. From that, I realized she needed to have a license, left it alone.
Okay.
I built a sizable portfolio as a young guy. I mean, before 21, I was driving,
nice
foreign cars and moving around, traveling through the music space. And I had the entrepreneurial spirit with the gift of speech, to connotate as an MC,
Right.
with the cunningness to be strategic from the hustlers and the players,
Right.
and the amazing culture from 60s, 70s, and 80s,
Right. All there.
all in my deck of cards.
Right. Amazing. And then with time, you transitioned into being a sports agent.
Well, that came along after music. I had written some songs. I was involved with a group called Cultural Vibe, which I was one of the founding members. We did house music for the. We had a song called Mafumbe, Mind Games, Power, all these different records remixed on a global level, did some touring, was signed to Capitol Records, and that came out. And I was managing, I discovered David Banner, managed and discovered him, Positive K. And I met a brother named Alonzo Shavers who had a sports company. Mm-hmm. And the concept was I was going to take the hustle, the speed, and the sexiness of the entertainment industry and put it with the sports industry. National Football League is just like the United States government or the military. Most of those clients have 4-year degrees or have been in a university or college for 2 years, whether somebody's doing their homework or they're student athletes.
Right.
So now I'm talking to someone that's cognitive. I'm talking to someone that understands systems, that can pull plays out. And we went from signing our first couple of clients. My first client was Damian Robinson, number 22, New York Jets. I went to Josh Evans. And then I did the biggest deal I did in the NFL was Asante Samuels. We did $60 million for him when he went to Philadelphia. And we've represented over $300 million in performance contracts in the National Football League.
Right, and the same thing, you were teaching them some of these basic principles of how to invest and how to make their money work for them, and essentially how to basically not get taken advantage of, because I know I've heard you say the time in the NFL, and I've seen it to be about 3 years, it used to be about 8, is very short.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a million times, they're basically CEOs with helmets on. And I was able to connect with them through, a lot of players are sponsored by the drive, the culture, or the cash of a hustler, a drug dealer, or somebody that they should not be involved with. We were able to communicate with these people immediately, whether it was drug dealers that put up money for these athletes to get them sneakers or helping family members out. We were able to not be involved in payola or paying off athletes. We didn't play with the alumni. As an African-American agency, there was one time my picture and my name were synonymous with if you Googled sports agent, my picture came up. Wow. So in an industry that was so dominated by tradition, we really made some inroads and some changes.
Absolutely. And then with your wealth, still looking for more challenges. It sounds like we're going down this path of constantly giving back and trying to go to that next level. You really discovered philanthropy and taking it to the next level. What did that look like, and how did you form your foundation?
Well, so one day I was in Atlanta. I was in a 12,500 square foot house. I had cars, traveling first class. I'm in newspapers, magazines, on TV. You saw ESPN. Right. I was living on television off of my ability to trade and represent great talent. And then I said, I don't know. I said, man, how did I get all this money? Is it from stocks? Was it from real estate? And then I said, no, where is the core? Because I never saw my father. I was a child when I saw my father. I saw my father died early in my life, but I didn't have a relationship with him. So my uncle was a mentor, was a leader. I had to create a mentor and a father by watching gangster movies and black exploitation movies with the superheroes and kind of putting that together with what I thought a man would be. And I ended up saying a man would be the woman. Well, a woman like my mother did not have that man. So I was going to be that man she dreamed of, not for a woman, but for the world.
Okay.
Right?
That's a lot to take on.
For the world. But I saw that as 8. All those times when something was missing, I was too small and too young and didn't have enough reach to change my whole world. So I said, let me change the whole world, And I did it day by day, step by step, pain by pain, failure by failure.
Right, I always say you live and learn, but you can also get burned. And I appreciate the emotion. I mean, to take that passion and want to give it back. I mean, I've seen the videos and I know they're real. You were there in the homeless shelter, you know, giving things to people and saying, I was where you are. And I didn't want to just bring a government pack of cheese. I didn't want to just bring you some food stamps. I wanted to bring you kicks that I might buy, that my guys wear. See?
What a recall.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
And give you guys high quality because you deserve it. It's just your circumstances are. That's very, very powerful. So many people say, and I'm not saying that the charity out there isn't real, but you had experienced it. So I think a lot of people that were accepting those things from you knew that you could really relate to them. Not just because you're a brother, but because you had literally been not in their shoes. I mean, practically without shoes.
Yeah, and those are tears with joy. Like I don't think about it that much. I just got emotional thinking about it, but I think we've been in existence almost over 25 years, Book Bank Foundation. We represent the lost, the lonely, and the forgotten. And the Bible, if you're into the Bible, it says the poor will always be amongst us. So why not be one of the poor that are P-O-U-R and pour in?
Right, you're right.
You know? And richness is indelible. It's at birth. It's like potential. It's like a fuse. It's like dynamite before it's lit. Wealth is a systematic process. You could be wealthy. So people that get a lot of money that are on their pathway to wealth are not rich in spirit, or generally not rich in temperament or discipline or understanding. But many people who have all those indelible qualities can outperform a wealthy person in the short range of their life. The systematic change that changes your ancestors' call, that changes your legacy, is when the two meet.
Yeah, and I know that you have an honorary doctorate. I mean, you don't just drop this knowledge just out of the sky. I mean, it has been well earned and definitely well appreciated. Tell us a little bit more about what the foundation does and what you all are doing now.
Yeah, so now it's with my brother. My brother has philanthropy. He has something called mentoring. He has a mentoring program. And it's in New York, and it's thriving, and it does really well. So he's in the same space, but he's doing something different. And he mentors young boys and young men. So we ended up both being in that same space. But what Book Bank does, we're an education-based foundation. We do a lot of, we believe our people, and all people are more kinetic now than ever, right? The displacement of the digital world.
Right, but let's hold on a second. All people are more kinetic than ever. Break that down for us, because you throw these phrases out. That almost flow like your rhymes. So tell us what we mean by that, because I can get my interpretation and I get a physics interpretation, but I want yours.
Okay. So we'll go from the physics and the human to the magnanimity of kinetics. So some people are so displaced from human exchange. They are involved in theorem. They're living in the digital world. They're online. There's not a lot of connectivity. There's not a lot of social space. They can earn their money, transfer it into Bitcoin, never deal with anybody, not kinetic. A lot of the hustlers, there's not a lot of hand hustling. I mean, people are finding ways to hustle in different ways, whether they're trading or, right? And the pandemic has kind of reduced that human connection, right? So kinetic, when you talk about the motion of it, the physics, the feeling, we as human beings need one another. We do need to resonate. Those of us that are able to duplicate the spirit of exchange with people, even in a prison cell, if the spirit is alive, more alive than the body, that person will thrive and connotate with the entire prison. It's their leadership, their thought leadership, their spirit that can move the man more than the bully that's just beating people up. The one guy who can cognitively move the building or move the physical guy can call the arms of the prison to move that one guy more than that one guy can move that whole prison.
I know that you have a book out and you have it with us, and the title is deep and some of the stuff in there, you're dropping knowledge. So Tell us what it's about.
It's called the Asian Power League. It's a novel. It's about a young Asian, I don't say whether he's Chinese, Korean, Japanese, I just say it's an Asian family, comes to America. They have tremendous amounts of money because they work through decades of building and saving and using the systems that's really popular in Asian culture, right? Generally modesty, honor, hard work, ethics, like it is in many cultures. But the focal point of this is they get him tons of tutors. He goes to the finest private schools, and he goes to prep schools. Then he goes on to work as an intern at major hedge funds and Fortune 500 companies. Right. In the internship, he meets these Machiavellian people who are cynical, a little bit biased, privileged, and then they throw him these ridiculous companies that he needs to model and evaluate to see whether they should go into the portfolio. They look at these companies like trash, like these companies could never go, let's dump it on his portfolio, and they're laughing at him. One of his, besides the focus on business, is quantum analytical equations and calculations. He builds a model so that he's able to build a stock portfolio that he has measurable percentages of equity in. Those companies grow, he becomes a billionaire. From there, as time goes on through the book, traveling, he runs for Congress. From Congress, he eventually runs for president. But one summer, he goes back and he meets his cousin. His cousin's in a group called the Asian Power League. And that Asian Power League is a gang, like many of the Asian gangs, we know their names. And he meets this beautiful girl that's with one of the leaders of the gang. Oh, wow. They have a romantic summer. They're going to kill him. His cousin stops it. So he wakes up and he doesn't know whether he got beat up or was he drinking too much alcohol, or was chilling with the girl. He goes back years later. As he's running for president, he gets a phone call and they say, "Congratulations, cousin." His name is Michael Ha-young. "We have pulled off the greatest leveraged buyout merger in the history of the world. We now own America because of the amount of stocks you have and the secrets you have." Right. He goes, "I'm not going to do that. I'm a man of principle. It's honor. Why would I do that?" He says, "You're a member of the Asian Power League." He says, "No, I'm not." He says, "You don't remember that we swore you in that night when I saved you, when you were going to get killed for sleeping with the girl?" And you're going to see who the character is. Right. So now he's being blackmailed, extorted. Does he surrender and leverage he becomes president of the United States, the presidency as the leader of America, and give all these secrets to the gang and to this country to take America down? Or does he stand and fight evil, although he's sacrificed and compromised? And that's what the Asian Power League is about.
We got a movie here. We got some options, and I know there's more coming. Yeah, that's great. I mean, and boy, that I was not expecting that at all. It's pretty amazing. And then also tell us about, we'll pop back to music for a bit, the work that you do. I know you had this big disco jam with a lot of other DJs and things like that, so you're still doing the music thing.
DJing once a month with Victor Simonelli, some of the greatest DJs. It's been amazing. I've only really been physically DJing for about 4 months. Mm-hmm. And then from there, it emerged into a global residency and hanging with the best, trying to learn and become better, and we're having a good time. It's on Instagram. You can check it out. It's on Mixcloud. DJ Glenn Sweety G Toby is the name I'm using as a DJ, and still doing philanthropy and running my businesses.
No, that's amazing. What words of wisdom, I mean, and you've given us so many of what have you already, that you leave for the young people? I think sometimes, as you were saying, they can be disengaged, disenchanted, disillusioned, because maybe they're in some ways growing up too far, too fast, with too much information. What kinds of pearls? Because you certainly have come such a long way, and to a level, it comes across to me where you're at peace with yourself, with your past, and with trying to help other people for their future.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm not at peace with the future yet. That's why we're working so hard. We're launching something called the Book Bank Institute. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It's going to be a curated space. We're doing a collaboration with Dan Vega, the CEO of Book Bank Foundation, David Branch, myself, Anthony Jackson, and a ton of other leaders, all involved to bring the finest curation of curriculum, experience with world leaders, into an interface. We're going to give away tons of scholarships. It's an amazing curriculum. That's one of the things I'm most excited about. But if I had a message, I would tell younger people that the devil is in digital. Now, that doesn't mean it's a guy with two horns. That doesn't mean the game has changed since you've been born. I'm just here to be a witness, and now it's sworn that if you're not careful, it's like the book page being torn. But now we can say we emanated and we're born. But I'm going to tell you something, and this ain't no corn, it ain't no porn, and yes, it's sworn. So I'm going to break it down like this. If you do not connect in the spirit and transfer the spirit and the ethos of man to the body of people physically, the world cannot change. Your ideology, your money, your Instagram is not going to move the spirit of people. Spirits move bodies. Bodies don't move spirits.
Drop it.
So it's the demon in the digital. It's not the devil necessarily in the digital. Let's be analytical and be analog-like in our process and processes and stay connected to things that are important. Empathy, passion, consciousness, health. Otherwise, we're just existing and not living.
And so maybe then the last message for that parent, because so many of them would tell you that now, especially in the spirit of COVID, that feels their kid essentially lives on the computers all the time. Even when they're at the dinner table, they're on the devices. When they go out, they're, yeah, okay, sure. What types of things they need to do to not sort of be overwhelmed, like you said, a little bit more by the digital than by the spiritual?
Well, I think most people don't think about it. They're like, these kids are always on their cell phone, not on their cell phone. They're pushing them off to stay on their cell phone. I would have them download what they learned every day. You could say, I don't understand what you're doing. Can you tell me? You're creating a space, connecting with your child. It's quality time. You're listening. You're giving them a voice at home. They're going to see the miracle of discovery. They're going to see the miracle of research. They're going to see the miracle of their theories and theorem being brought back to their parents to be rewarded. We don't want to compete with them. You'll say, really? Is that what you think? Well, let me show you this dusty book, or let me tell you about my story. Okay. And you could smile at the kid if they're a little bit off, if they're completely wrong, or they're completely right. You can whisper in, let me give you something to add to that. And the kid is fully engaged. We just have to listen to what they're saying, right? If you look at the greatest orators, if you look at the greatest artists, they spoke for society. They talked even whether it was the African griots, whether it was the Medici, whether it was during the time of Italy, all of the artisans, the clowns, right? They'd bring in the clowns to entertain. We gotta keep talking. We have to listen. Listen to the next generation. If we can't stop where they're going, at least we'll know where they're going.
I love that. This has been wonderful. I mean, I just loved it. I think there's so many messages here and so much to unpack. And I hope that we can also catch up again. I was so happy when David helped us get connected and
amazing,
enjoyed listening to your music, learning more about you, learning about your past, and today having you share with us.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So I thank you. And I'm Dr. Moshe Lewis. Please check out Dr. Glenn Toby's book, Asian Power League. You can get it. And you really should read it. It sounds amazing, and the stories are incredible. Also, check him out on Instagram. He's doing amazing things, and we love the Book Bank Foundation for bringing this all together and allowing us to have Dr. Glenn Toby with us. Also, thank you so much for watching, and please continue to listen to us on musicandmedicine.show. Thank you.